Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni. 155 verses from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. They who have not led the holy life, who in youth have not acquired wealth, pine away like old herons at a pond without fish. The Blessed One spoke this verse to remind us of the importance of living wisely from youth, of cultivating the treasures of virtue, wisdom, and mindfulness, which cannot be taken away and which endure beyond the fleeting pleasures of the world. Long ago, there was a young man born into a wealthy family who sought pleasure, indulgence, and amusement, thinking that the abundance of possessions and the pleasures of youth could provide lasting satisfaction. He spent his days in pursuit of fleeting pleasures, entertaining himself with games, parties, and indulgences, neglecting to cultivate the mind, to act virtuously, or to develop understanding. As the years passed, wealth dwindled, circumstances changed, and the body aged. The pleasures he had chased no longer brought joy, and the mind, untrained and restless, began to pine like an old heron at a pond where no fish remain. He realized too late that worldly wealth and indulgence do not endure, and that without the cultivation of virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom, life becomes empty, unsatisfying, and sorrowful. In contrast, those who cultivate the holy life, who practice ethical conduct, meditation, and insight from youth, acquire treasures that endure like water nourishing the pond, like fish sustaining life. Wealth, in this sense, is not the accumulation of possessions, but the accumulation of virtue, mindfulness, and understanding. By living a life of restraint, kindness, and reflection, one cultivates a richness that cannot be taken away, that supports peace, clarity, and liberation. The Blessed One taught that even when material possessions are lost, those who have cultivated the mind and heart remain rich in understanding, calm, and compassion. They do not pine like the old heron, for they have secured a pond teeming with nourishment, a mind fertile with virtue, insight, and generosity. Observing the lives of others, the monk saw that many wander without guidance, seeking pleasure without wisdom, neglecting the cultivation of the mind. Some invest their energy in wealth or fame, believing these to be permanent, yet they pine in sorrow when fortune wanes or aging comes. Others indulge in sense pleasures, seeking to fill an inner emptiness, yet they find only impermanence, dissatisfaction, and the shadows of craving. The verse teaches that the early cultivation of the holy life, the steady accumulation of virtue and understanding, is like sowing seeds in fertile soil. They grow, mature, and bear fruit even when the seasons change. The young who train the mind, restrain speech, act with compassion, and reflect on the impermanence of all things, acquire wealth that is invisible to the eye but tangible to the heart, a wealth that nourishes the mind, supports clear insight, and strengthens the capacity for awakening. Meditation becomes the pond that sustains the mind. Awareness becomes the fish that nourish clarity. And ethical conduct becomes the shelter that protects the heart from the storms of life. Even in old age, those who have cultivated the holy life experience the richness of peace, contentment, and wisdom. They are free from the pining, the restlessness, and the sorrow of the untrained mind. They do not cling to what is transient, for they have secured treasures that endure, compassion, insight, and understanding. The Blessed One also emphasized that the mind is the true wealth, more enduring than gold, more nourishing than food, and more sustaining than water in the dry season. Just as a pond without fish becomes lifeless, so too does a mind without cultivation become barren. Those who neglect ethical living, meditation, and the accumulation of virtue and understanding find life empty, unsatisfying, and sorrowful. They long for what is fleeting and pine for what cannot endure. The wise, however, understand that youth is precious, that the present moment is a field for practice, and that the habits and qualities cultivated now shape the richness or barrenness of the mind in later years. Every act of kindness, every moment of mindfulness, every reflection on impermanence and the nature of suffering nourishes the mind, ensuring that even in old age, one's heart remains fertile and abundant. The verse reminds us that fortune in life is not measured by possessions, beauty, or social status, but by the wealth of the mind cultivated through ethical conduct, meditation, and wisdom. A young person who invests time in the holy life secures a future of clarity, peace, and freedom from longing, while one who neglects the cultivation of the mind may find in old age a pond without fish, a heart without nourishment, and a mind weighed down by sorrow and regret. Through this teaching, the Blessed One calls us to diligence, reflection, and early cultivation to lead a life imbued with virtue, mindfulness, and insight, so that the mind, like a well-stocked pond, may sustain peace, clarity, and awakening throughout the seasons of life. The pining of the untrained mind, like the lonely heron, is a warning, a mirror reflecting the consequences of neglecting the cultivation of virtue and wisdom, and an invitation to begin the practice of the holy life without delay. As the seeker reflected deeply on the verse, he saw that the untrained youth, who neglects virtue and wisdom, resembles a pond in which no fish swim, a pond that appears serene but lacks life and sustenance. The mind, untrained and undisciplined, may seem calm on the surface, yet beneath arises longing, dissatisfaction, and restlessness. He understood that true wealth, the kind that nourishes and supports the mind, is not measured in coins or possessions, but in the accumulation of virtue, in the cultivation of mindfulness, and in the practice of wisdom. Those who acquire these treasures from youth build a foundation that endures. Their hearts remain fertile, their minds steady, and their spirits nourished even when worldly circumstances change. Observing ordinary life, the seeker saw many who chase temporary pleasures, believing that indulgence will bring happiness. They seek amusement, sensory satisfaction, and recognition, yet these pursuits, like chasing shadows, leave the mind empty, yearning, and sorrowful. As they age, the pleasures fade, wealth dissipates, and the body weakens. The mind, untrained, is left like the heron at a pond where no fish swim, longing for sustenance it cannot find. In contrast, those who practice the holy life from youth acquire the treasures of virtue, insight, and mindfulness. Ethical conduct serves as the walls of their pond, preventing chaos and harm. Meditation fills the pond with clarity and calm, allowing the mind to rest in observation and insight. Wisdom, cultivated over time, becomes the fish that sustains understanding and peace, nourishing the heart with the ability to see clearly the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all phenomena. The Blessed One taught that this inner wealth is enduring, unaffected by the fluctuations of the external world, and it supports awakening and freedom from suffering. The seeker recognized that each moment of practice, each act of restraint, kindness, and mindfulness is a seed sown in fertile soil. These seeds grow, mature, and bear fruit over time, enriching the mind with clarity, compassion, and insight. The richness accumulated in youth carries one safely into the later seasons of life, ensuring that even as the body ages, the heart and mind remain nourished. He also saw that human life is precious and fleeting. Youth, in particular, is a rare opportunity for cultivation. Time wasted in indulgence, distraction, or attachment is difficult to reclaim. The pond without fish, empty and lifeless, is a mirror of the mind that neglects the cultivation of virtue and wisdom. It is a reminder that the early effort to train the mind brings peace, clarity, and liberation in all seasons of life. In this understanding, he reflected on countless lives wandering blindly, chasing fleeting pleasure and accumulating unwholesome habits. Some are caught in the pursuit of wealth, some in sensual indulgence, others in pride or aversion. All, without guidance or cultivation, risk the pining of the untrained mind, like herons longing at empty ponds, searching in vain for satisfaction. The verse calls us to vigilance, reflection, and effort to cultivate virtue, practice mindfulness, and develop insight while the opportunity remains. Through ethical living, meditation, and the study of the Dhamma, one acquires true wealth, an enduring richness of mind that cannot be lost, that nourishes the heart, and that supports the path to liberation. The seeker realized that happiness rooted in external things is transient and fragile, but the wealth of the mind, virtue, mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion provides enduring peace and stability. Just as a pond full of fish sustains life for all who come to drink, so too does the cultivated mind sustain understanding, clarity, and compassion, supporting both oneself and others. Daily practice, he saw, is essential. Each moment of mindfulness, each act of ethical restraint, each reflection on impermanence strengthens the foundation of the pond, fills it with nourishment, and populates it with the fish of understanding and insight. The mind becomes fertile, rich, and capable of sustaining peace, contentment, and awakening. This teaching of the Blessed One, the verse itself, serves as guidance for all who seek lasting happiness. The imagery of the pond and the heron reminds us that life without cultivation, without virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom leads to sorrow and longing. Yet with diligent practice, the pond can be filled with life, sustaining the mind and supporting liberation. The seeker resolved to guide others, teaching them to recognize the fleeting nature of worldly pleasure, the importance of early cultivation, and the enduring value of virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom. Through patient instruction, compassionate guidance, and the example of his own practice, he inspired others to lead the holy life, to acquire the wealth of the mind from youth, and to secure a life of clarity, peace, and liberation. The verse thus shines as a beacon, encouraging all to cultivate their inner wealth, to nourish the mind, and to prepare for the seasons of life with diligence, insight, and compassion. The pining of the untrained heron is a warning. But the flourishing pond full of life is the promise of a mind rich in virtue, mindfulness, and understanding. The seeker, reflecting deeply on the transient nature of worldly life, understood that those who neglect cultivation in youth not only suffer in later years, but often fail to recognize the precious opportunity of life itself. Just as the heron waits at the barren pond, longing for nourishment it cannot find, so too does the mind of one untrained in virtue and wisdom pine amidst fleeting pleasures and impermanent conditions. Life presents countless distractions, sensual enjoyment, fleeting achievements, worldly fame, and material accumulation, and those who pursue these without reflection become like dry reeds, swaying aimlessly in the winds of desire and delusion. The Blessed One taught that the true wealth of life is found not in outward abundance, but in the treasures of ethical conduct, mindfulness, and insight cultivated from the earliest days of awareness. Those who practice restraint, observe moral precepts, meditate to see clearly the impermanent and unsatisfactory nature of phenomena, and develop understanding, accumulate enduring riches that sustain the mind through every season of life. The seeker observed that early diligence is like sowing seeds in fertile soil. Each act of kindness, each moment of reflection, each restraint of body, speech, and mind strengthens the pond within, fills it with the nourishment of virtue, and brings life to the mind, creating a stable foundation for wisdom and liberation. Conversely, those who neglect the cultivation of virtue allow their mind to grow barren, their inner pond empty. They chase after ephemeral pleasures, accumulate restless thoughts, and bind themselves to the consequences of craving, ignorance, and aversion. The imagery of the heron at the empty pond is a vivid reminder of the sorrow and longing that arise from a life untrained in the Dhamma. Yet even for those who have strayed, the Blessed One offers guidance. It is never too late to turn the mind toward ethical living, mindful awareness, and the cultivation of wisdom. By gradually training the mind, observing the arising of desire and letting it go, practicing restraint and compassion, one begins to refill the pond, attracting the nourishing fish of insight, clarity, and peace. The seeker reflected that life is fleeting and the opportunity for cultivation may pass quickly. Youth, energy, and awareness are precious. They form the fertile ground upon which the seeds of virtue and wisdom can grow. Those who invest in this practice early find their later years rich in understanding, contentment, and serenity. They do not pine like the heron at an empty pond, for their inner wealth is constant, sustaining, and unshakable by external circumstances. Moreover, the cultivation of virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom naturally extends to others. Compassion arises, patience deepens, and understanding guides action. The rich pond of the mind nourishes not only the practitioner, but all beings who come into contact with them. Words spoken from insight, deeds performed with care, and mindfulness cultivated in every moment become sources of blessing and guidance. The verse, "They who have not led the holy life, who in youth have not acquired wealth, pine away like old herons at a pond without fish," thus serves both as warning and encouragement. It calls the young to diligence, the aware to reflection, and all to the cultivation of treasures that endure beyond the fleeting world. The seeker, having understood this teaching, devoted his life to practice, observing each moment with mindfulness, restraining unwholesome action, and cultivating insight. In this way, he filled his inner pond with life, attracting the nourishment of clarity, understanding, and peace. He guided others to do the same, illustrating that while worldly wealth is impermanent, the wealth of the mind is timeless and sustaining. By living with awareness, practicing ethical conduct, and developing wisdom, one secures a life of richness that cannot be diminished by aging, loss, or change. Even in the later seasons of life, the practitioner experiences peace, joy, and clarity, free from the sorrow and longing of those who neglected the cultivation of virtue in youth. The teachings of the Blessed One shine through this verse as a guiding light, encouraging all to lead the holy life, to acquire the wealth of ethical living and insight, and to nourish the mind so that it may sustain contentment, clarity, and awakening throughout the journey of life. The pining of the untrained heron is transformed into the serene flourishing of a pond abundant with life, symbolizing the richness and enduring peace available to those who practice the Dhamma diligently and wisely from youth. By observing the mind, cultivating virtue, and practicing mindfulness, one acquires a wealth that no external condition can diminish. A pond teeming with the sustaining fish of insight, compassion, and clarity, ensuring liberation and peace for oneself and for all beings who witness this path. Thank you for watching my video. Namalamat Ba. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.